Alright, chapter 2. Mike's a bit closer this time. You're probably going to hear the turning of the pages. And honestly, I wanted to wait to see how popular this got, but then I remembered that I'm doing this for me anyway, and nobody watches my shit. So yeah. Sorry about that. I'll probably mute that. I have the microphone bag over the thing in the microphone, and I tapped it. I'm gonna listen back to that later. It's gonna be funny as hell. Anyway. The next day it had stopped raining, but a thick white fog had lowered over the house. "I'm going for a walk," said Coraline. "Don't go too far," said her mother, "and dress up warmly." Coraline put on her blue coat with a hood and her red scarf and her yellow Wellington boots. She went out. Miss Spink was walking her dogs. "Hello, Caroline," said Miss Spink. "Rotten weather." "Yes," said Coraline. "I played Portia once," said Miss Spink. "Miss Forcible talks about her Ophelia, but it was my Portia they came to see when we trod the boards." Miss Spink was bundled up in pullovers and cardigans, so she seemed more small and circular than ever. She looked like a large, fluffy egg. She wore thick glasses that made her eyes seem huge. "They used to send flowers to my dressing room, they did," she said. That's a nice picture. "Who did?" asked Coraline. Miss Spink looked around cautiously, looking over first one shoulder and then the other, peering into the mists as though someone might be listening. "Men," she whispered. Then she tucked the dogs to heel and waddled off back toward her house. Coraline continued her walk. She was 3/4 of the way around the house when she saw Miss Forcible standing at the door to the flat she shared with Miss Spink. "Have you seen Miss Spink, Caroline?" Coraline told her that she had, and that Miss Spink was out walking the dogs. "I do hope she doesn't get lost. It'll bring on her shingles if she does, you'll see," said Miss Forcible. "You'd have to be an explorer to find your way around in this fog." "I am an explorer," said Coraline. "Of course you are, lovey," said Miss Forcible. "Don't get lost now." Coraline continued walking through the gardens in the gray mist. She always kept in sight of the house. After about 10 minutes of walking, she found herself back where she had started. The hair over her eyes was limp and wet, and her face felt damp. "Ahoy, Caroline!" called the crazy old man upstairs. "Oh, hello," said Coraline. She could hardly see the old man through the mist. He walked down the steps on the outside of the house that led up past Coraline's front door to the door of his flat. He walked down very slowly. Coraline waited at the bottom of the stairs. "The mice do not like the mist," he told her. "It makes their whiskers droop." "I don't like the mist much either," admitted Coraline. The old man looking down so close to the bottoms of his mustache tickled Coraline's ear. "The mice have a message for you," he whispered. Coraline didn't know what to say. "This message is this: don't go through the door." He paused. "Did that mean anything to you?" "No," said Coraline. The old man shrugged. "They are funny, the mice. They get things wrong. They get your name wrong, you know. They keep saying Coraline, not Caroline. Not Caroline at all." He picked up a milk bottle from the bottom of the stairs and started back up to his attic flat. Coraline went indoors. Her mother was working in her study. Her mother's study smelled of flowers. "What shall I do?" asked Coraline. "When you go back to school?" asked her mother. "Next week," said Coraline. Said her mother. "I suppose I shall have to get you new school clothes." Remind me, dear, or else I'll forget. She went back to typing things on the computer screen. What shall I do? Repeated Coraline. Draw something. Her mother passed her a sheet of paper and a ballpoint pen. Caroline tried to draw the mist. After 10 minutes of drawing, she still had a white sheet of paper with mist written on it. In one corner, in slightly wiggly letters. She grunted and passed it to her mother. Very modern, dear, said Coraline's mother. Coraline crept into the drawing room and tried to open the old door in the corner. It was locked once more. She supposed her mother must have locked it again. She shrugged. Coraline went to see her father. He had his back to the door as he typed. Go away, he said cheerfully as she walked in. I'm bored, she said. Learn how to tap dance, he suggested without turning around. Coraline shook her head. Why don't you play with me? She asked. Busy, she said. Working, he added. He still hadn't turned around to look at her. Why don't you go and bother Miss Fink or Miss Forcible? Coraline put on her coat and pulled up her hood and went out of the house. She went downstairs. She rang the door of Miss Fink and Miss Forcible's flat. Coraline could hear a frenzied woofing of the Scotty dogs ran out into the hall. After a while, Miss Fink opened the door. Oh, it's you, Caroline. Can't even screw up names properly, she said. Angus, Hamish, and Bruce, down now, lovies. It's only Caroline. Come in, dear. Would you like a cup of tea? The flat smelled of furniture polish and dogs. Yes, please, said Coraline. Miss Fink led her into a dusty little room, which she called the parlor. On the walls were black and white photographs of pretty women and theater programs in frames. Miss Forcible was sitting in one of the armchairs, knitting hard. They poured Coraline a cup of tea in a little pink bone china cup, with a saucer. They gave her a dry Garibaldi biscuit to go with it. Miss Forcible looked at Miss Fink, picked up her knitting, and took a deep breath. Anyway, April, as I was saying, you still have to admit there's life in the old dog yet. Miriam, dear, neither of us is as young as we were. Madame Arcotti, replied Miss Forcible, the nurse and Romeo, Lady Bracknell, character parts, they can't retire you from the stage. Now, Miriam, we agreed, Miss Fink said. Got that backwards. Coraline wondered if they had forgotten she was there. They weren't making much sense. She decided they were having an argument as old and comfortable as an armchair. The kind of argument that no one ever really wins or loses, but can go on forever if both parties are willing. She sipped her tea. I'll read the leaves if you want, said Miss Fink to Coraline. Sorry, said Coraline. The tea leaves, dear. I'll read your future. I hit the mic again. Coraline passed Miss Fink her cup. Miss Fink peered short-sightedly at the black tea leaves in the bottom. She pursed her lips. You know, Caroline, she said after a while, you are in terrible danger. Miss Forcible snorted and put down her knitting. Don't be silly, April. Stop scaring the girl. Your eyes are going. Pass me that cup, child. Coraline carried the cup over to Miss Forcible. Miss Forcible looked into it carefully. She shook her head and looked into it again. Oh, dear, she said. You were right, April. She is in danger. See, Miriam, said Miss Fink triumphantly. My eyes are as good as they ever were. What am I in danger from? Said Coraline. Miss Fink and Forcible stared at her blankly. It didn't say, said Miss Fink. Tea leaves aren't reliable for that kind of thing. Not really. They're good for general, but not for specifics. What shall I do, then? Asked Coraline, who was slightly alarmed by this. Don't wear green in your dressing room, suggested Miss Fink. Or mention the Scottish play, said Miss Forcible. Coraline wondered why so few of the adults she had met made any sense. She sometimes wondered who they thought they were talking to. And be very, very careful, said Miss Fink. She got up from the armchair and went over to the fireplace. On the mantel was a small jar. Miss Fink took off the top of the small jar and began to pull things out of it. There was a tiny china duck, a thimble, a strange little brass coin, 2 paper clips, and a stone with a hole in it. She passed Coraline the stone with a hole in it. What's it for? Asked Coraline. The hole went all the way through the middle of the stone. She held it up to the window and looked through it. It might help, said Miss Fink. They're good for bad things sometimes. Coraline put on her coat, said goodbye to Mrs. Fink and Forcible, and to the dogs, and went outside. The mist hung like blindness around the house. She walked slowly to the stairs up to her family's flat, and then stopped and looked around. In the mist, it was a ghost world. In danger? Thought Coraline to herself. It sounded exciting. It didn't sound like a bad thing. Not really. Coraline went back upstairs, her fist closed tightly around her new stone. And I can only assume what that is a picture of, and that's probably going to be for chapter 3. So it's a nice story so far. I've enjoyed it, despite the times that I've hit my microphone twice. Maybe I should take the bag off of it. Maybe it's doing more harm than good. But regardless, the story's turning out nice. I'm so far only up to page 21. 22 if you count the picture. So chapter 3 starts on page 23, and I'm probably going to read it sooner than later this time, since I'm really only doing this for me. I don't know, I enjoy it. I was having a log of this. Only 12 and a half minutes so far. Not bad. My thought process so far is, and of course this is just coming from a small bit of expectation from what I read up about it, especially in its comparison to its movie counterpart, that just so far alone, I don't feel like the movie did it justice. I was honestly just afraid slightly when I first watched Coraline at a young age. But it was mainly because I have arachnophobia and the mom turned into a spider. So the story gives it a new light, a very interesting way of drawing the reader in. I remember back in middle school I had started reading. I don't think I got all too far in it. But I had started reading extremely loud and incredibly close. Or was it incredibly loud and extremely close? It was one of the two. And the writing style kind of reminded me of that, because that was the first time that I've ever read anything with that form of writing style, where it was not chunks of text followed by more chunks of text. Granted, I don't read all that much, so this is probably going to be one of the only actual books, and I mean that as in, like, not, any form of, like, manga, because I think I've read, like, 1 or 2 in the past, but, like, this is probably going to be the first and only book that I've ever read in my life so far, because I want to finish it, and I'm enjoying it so far, and I really like the way that Neil had done the wording for some of the things. I've had a few people that I know complain about how often people, like, would say somebody's name, and I recall complaining back to one of them, the person who gave me the book, in fact, saying, "Wow, you repeated the name on the same page 13 times." because she had once yelled at me for writing like that. So I find it interesting where um I find it interesting how other people would write multiple characters, especially of the same gender, because it's very hard to keep saying her over and over and over again without getting confused. I feel like I do a good way of explaining that by having each action of what people do broken up by paragraph, but that's just me. I find it very interesting the fact that you'll end a sentence with more with forcible rather miss forcible, and then immediately start the next sentence with miss forcible. I find that very peculiar. I find it very interesting. So yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am so far. I understand that's only the second chapter, but I've enjoyed it so far. I'm probably going to go back and mute the small times that or at least quieten down the few times that I've bumped the microphone. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Catch you next chapter.